Welcome to Naveem Connect, where spirituality meets the messy but beautiful reality of being human. I'm Jean, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Humphrey.
Welcome to our very first episode. Today, we'll be covering our stories. You're going to meet how we met, why spirituality drives our mission, and how two tech professionals ended up building a platform that's part marketplace, part community. So, Jean, why don't we start with how did we meet?
Yeah, sure. So we met in the early 2000s, I want to say. And the company initially was a consulting company, and then it later pivoted to becoming a cybersecurity startup. And for those of you out there that either had a demanding job or have worked at a startup, you know the amount of time and intensity and focus and challenges, you have to face. And, all the while, we're missing personal moments, birthdays, dinners, time with the family and friends. And, I think during those times, when we're feeling down about, maybe disappointing the people we loved, we would have these conversations about why were we pushing so hard? What was driving us? Were the sacrifices even worth it?
Yeah. And that's the paradox, isn't it? We work really hard and the startup demanded, 120% of us. But then at the same time, it forced us to dig deep, right? Like to work really hard and look deep into that. And we worked, I don't know, over 20 something years into it. And then it sort of all of a sudden came to an end abruptly. Right. So we got acquired. And I think that acquisition was a life-changing event for us. And I would say it forced us to some, I don't want to call it crises, but it led us to some processes that I think each of us handle differently.
Oh, I'd call it a full-on crisis. At least for me, at least for me, it was a full.
Well, on that note, so let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about how does big life changes drive spiritual awakening? Because I think that's what we went through.
Yeah. So, after working, with our team for over 2 decades and spending so much time together, we truly became kind of like a family unit. And I think for me, after the acquisition, we're all getting separated, right? And I felt like that foundation and that stability that the family unit provided me was just all of a sudden just getting ripped away from me.
Right.
And it was a moment where I felt like everything that I had built up until then, it was just all being upended, and I found myself questioning everything.
Right.
Where I stood, what was coming next, and the truth was I didn't know, and that scared the hell out of me. I felt insecure, uncertain, and unsure of what was coming next, and the timing only made things harder because it was during COVID, or at the start of COVID, and everything was changing all around me and had no idea what the future would look like. And I definitely had more questions and no answers. And I just, felt lost.
Right.
By chance, my husband and I had this trip to Thailand already kind of booked. So, we went, and while we were there, we got a spiritual bath. And for anyone unfamiliar, a spiritual bath is kind of a cleansing ritual. It's meant to kind of bring renewal or remove negativity. And, some ways you can compare it to a baptism, right? Though I think different cultures and different traditions have their own version of a cleansing ritual.
Right.
My spiritual bath was performed by an Ajaran, and in the Thai culture, an Ajaran is this respected spiritual leader, very knowledgeable in spiritual practices and rituals. So we get this spiritual bath, and it had to happen first thing in the morning, right? While the sun was rising. So before dawn, we actually had to go to a market and get some flowers. I think they were jasmine, which needed to be placed in the water before the Ajaran blessed it. So then we brought them to the Ajaran's place and watched him as he prepared the water,
Okay.
straight out of the garden hose, I might add. The Jaran like blessed the water, placed a rope around us, and began chanting. And then he started ladling kind of like the water over our heads. No real rhythm to it, so no way to predict when the next pour was coming. So we're like gasping a little bit for air and feeling like, the shock kind of the water, the cold water kind of like rushing over us. So, but once it was over, I stepped away, not knowing at the time though that anything really happened,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it wasn't like some immediate overwhelming sense of rebirth. It wasn't like I walked away thinking, oh, I've been transformed. Nothing like that, but there was something there.
Okay. Yeah.
That I could feel, but it was subtle, right? It was, just something, I guess I could say like the page turned or like a line was drawn or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it makes total sense, and it's interesting because, as you were saying that, I just realized today how divergent but similar our experiences were during that time, right? Because I was going, so the ending of the company, the acquisition was rough for me for the same reasons that you were. Like, I mean, I felt, like we built a company, we were working there for so long, like we were a family. So that was tough. Like that ending and how fast it ended, I did feel like a mourning. Like I felt like, oh, geez, like just somebody died. And I was apprehensive of what the new opportunities were going to come. And, we got acquired a very big company. So where was I going to fit, going from the position that I was. So it was a scary moment. At the same time, I was going through a divorce process, which, the way you put it is you weren't expecting your life to be there. I wasn't expecting my life to be ending on both sides, my work and my marriage. And that drove me, like, I felt like I was in a big hole at the time. Like I couldn't see the future. I just couldn't see anything in the future. Right. I was just kind of stuck there. And I felt, I mean, honestly, it was like I felt lost. I actually felt lost. Like I didn't feel confident on my job because I didn't have a new company and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't feel, in my personal life, I felt like it was a failure, right? I actually felt like a failure. Like to me, the divorce was a failure. So I just felt like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And through that, it was by luck actually that I just found. I was watching YouTube, I saw some yoga stuff, and I was like, oh, I don't know what it is. I started watching it, and it's like, oh, this sounds interesting. Right? I started kind of watching some yoga stuff, and a particular guru, but it's similar to your experience. It was more like, hey, they're offering if you want to get deeper into it, there's a program you get into. And I went ahead and did the program. It's like a week-long program. And there is it's not a bath, but it is a kind of like an initiation, right? There's like an energy initiation. It's just like you describe it. It's not like you do it. And the way it's done is like you kind of meditate and then they do some chanting and then they kind of get you into it. But it's like, I call it like a spark. Like at that moment, it was kind of like you said, it's like a line. So everything from that point forward, look, the job is done. The marriage is done. There's nothing you can change about that.
Yeah.
Right. It's actually one of the things that you do in the meditation is the past is gone. There's nothing, you cannot change the past. Past is done. You can't change it. Right.
Yeah.
The future hasn't happened yet. So you cannot try to manipulate it, or it hasn't happened. The only thing you can deal with is right now. Right. And me, for me, that was the most logical thing that anybody could have done. It was like, oh my God, that got me out of it. But I felt like I did feel at that moment. I remember when I got initiated that I was like, oh, okay. all right, I just got to move forward.
Yeah.
Like from this point, I got to move forward. And it took a while. Like, I mean, I started, I had tried to meditate for a long time. I tried to do other things for a long time. It wasn't working. But for some reason, that felt logical to me. And it got me into that kind of process of moving forward and looking at life differently. That's the best way I can describe it is I started kind of looking at life in a different way.
Yeah.
Right.
What's interesting is as we're talking about it, I realized just now, right, that it's like spirituality finds you, like the universe kind of finds you at the moment that you need it, right? Because like I didn't specifically go to Thailand to get a spiritual bath. You didn't specifically go out and start looking at yoga and doing these things, but in the moments that we were both, I guess, can I use the word despair? Here?
Yeah, that's how we felt.
In the moments of our despair, right? Like the universe kind of answers with these opportunities if we're aware, like if we are open enough to kind of just walk through that door, right? And like for you it was yoga, for me it was, I was on this trip and my husband is really into like tattoos and getting a sekyan and etc. And then we ended up doing a spiritual bath, right? So but how being, I guess, open or being self-aware kind of helped us kind of go, okay, let's just try this.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I guess that brings us to our next section, which is what does spirituality mean to us?
Yeah, which is perfect segue. So let's talk about it. I mean, for me, I'll start with my side, right? So I think you and I have spoken about this, but I think as we were going through that process, COVID hit, right? It was the COVID time frame. And we were in the lockdowns, right? And you couldn't go anywhere. So you had to kind of be inside, both physically and emotionally, right? It just kind of forced you to do introspection.
Yeah.
So for me, kind of like the timing of it worked out because I used that time to do more meditation, start looking into this. And all my life, it's something that I've kind of, spirituality is something that I've been interested in the sense of I grew up in a Catholic, tradition, right? I grew up in Puerto Rico, went to Catholic school, but my family practices Ifa, which is a Yoruba African tradition from a religion point of view. And I also have a spirituality, like, my grandmother and people in my family were spiritual. So I grew up being aware of multiple practices. Mm-hmm. And that kind of, I think, sparked my curiosity into what spirituality actually means, right? And then when I went to college, I grew up, I study a lot of other religions and practices. And it wasn't until I hit yoga, after all this process, that it all sort of came together for me, right? And what for me, spirituality means a universal energy. Right. Like what I discovered is if you peel the layers of dogma and everything else and all religions or traditions, the message is pretty much saying like we're all together, right? We're all brothers and sisters. There's this universal energy that I believe we all know about it, right? But because of the world we live in and materialistic things and, just gotta live, right? The priority needs. We concentrate on what's in front of us, but everybody, I think, deep down, sort of feels that there's something more, right? There's something else, and for me, that it is what it is. It's a universal energy that we're all connected to. That if we all sort of embrace it, it makes us live a better world, live a better life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, spirituality, it's really evolved for me as I've grown. So when I was younger, I saw it as something directly tied to religion. But over time, I became, less focused about, religious rules and more interested in the deeper aspects of self-awareness and growth. Mm-hmm. Because, there's many spiritual traditions that talk about divinity kind of already existing within us.
Right.
And that shared idea that we each carry a spark of something greater inside. And that thought, really stuck with me. And instead of focusing on, I guess, what you would call a structured religion, I started exploring spirituality as a way to understand myself, this world, and build empathy and, recognize that we're all kind of just interconnected. So, I've really come to understand that, growth isn't linear. Sometimes, some days you're thinking, life is great, everything feels like it's falling into place. And then other days you'll have, life kind of kicks you in the teeth and forces you to pause and kind of reevaluate. So spirituality to me, it's been, something I definitely return to when I need it. And then, but I definitely appreciate and reflect on it when I don't. I mean, there is a reason why we begin every podcast episode by acknowledging the messy yet beautiful reality of being human, because I think we both agree life can be chaotic, but it can also hold incredible beauty if we're able to see it. Because I know when I'm in the depths of my despair, it's nearly impossible to recognize that beauty. Everything feels heavy and negativity just takes over, right? So during those moments, I've learned that without self-awareness, mindfulness, and acceptance, it's difficult to shift your perspective. And growth requires digging in deep, facing the pain, sitting with it, and allowing it to transform you.
But you're right. It's a point of view. It's how you see it, right? It's everything's there. Is how you look, what prism you look through. I liked what you're saying, Jean, in the sense that, because I think, and this is where we connect, is so you mentioned that it's all going inside, deep inside, that we're, the line of we all have to go deep. To me, that's where you find that connection to that energy.
Yeah.
Right? Like by going deep, it's where we find that connection to that universal energy that brings it all together. And like you said, it makes us more empathetic, gives us more compassion, help us be a better community around.
Yeah, I think when you go, it's a weird thing, right? Because when you go inside, you think it's for you. But when you go inside, you actually realize you're not perfect. You're messy. And when you do that, you're able to give grace to other people because you realize that about yourself. Right? And so there is no more expectation of people always being perfect, because you also know that you're not perfect. Right.
Exactly.
You also know that if you have a bad day, you might have a bad attitude. I mean, I'm on the spiritual journey, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to cuss somebody out if they ding my car or something. Right. Like I'm still a person. Right. Do I try to keep it together? Yes, I do. Right. And that's why we call it a journey, because you're just on it and you're human.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the key word. I want to bring that up. Human. We are humans. And, we live in this world. We have to live in the world. And there's stuff that happens. So this whole concept of, you got to be holy, it doesn't work. You got to live within that. But reminding yourself, as you said, that we're all not perfect. If we have compassion and look at other people just the way we look at ourselves, that's a difference, right? That's a difference.
It lays that foundation for a bridge, like one that allows us to come together and not demand perfection, but to seek understanding, right? The true connection happens when we let go of rigid expectations and we meet each other as we are, right? That's far more productive than tearing down bridges and retreating into isolation, because as humans, we aren't meant to exist in solitude. We thrive in connection, in sharing understanding, and in the willingness to build something together. Plus, we can only live in solitude for so long.
So since we're talking about that bridge and kind of bringing things together, I think that's a good point. Let's talk about what drove us to create Naveem and why Naveem.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll start, and so let's start with the name, right? Naveem.
Yeah.
Right. So if you think about it, given our experiences in interesting that we're talking about today, you actually say rebirth when you were doing the bath, right? And
Yeah.
it's kind of like that spark. So we looked at names, and the name is actually means newly born, right? It's derived from Sanskrit, but it actually means newly born, right?
Yes.
Because I think it reflects our vision, right? Of, as we were talking about, continual renewal, growth, how we want people to kind of go inside and provide them to that area. Like, now, to be very succinct, we started with a vision of creating a holistic platform,
Yeah.
right? That combines spirituality, but also, because we live in this world, wellness, coaching, and then the products that support that process, right? So we wanted to kind of give both sides so people can drive into that journey.
Yeah, I think what we found when we were going through kind of COVID and kind of our spiritual journeys then was that all of these things were kind of separated, right? Like you have
Mm-hmm.
you if you want to meditate, you go to a meditation app. You know, you want to
Right.
find crystals, you find a crystal provider. You want coaching, you got to go and look for a coaching person, right?
Right.
And what we wanted to do was centralize everything into one place,
Right.
easy for somebody if they're looking at, different types of, if they have different types of interests, all based in spirituality, where can they go to just find all of it?
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
then, so I think with a lot of new companies that are created, they're created because they're answering a specific need that the founders actually were needed and thought that, hey,
Yeah.
I think other people would need it.
Right.
Going back to our name though, I want to say it's not like, for the listeners, it's not like we specifically chose newly born, right? We actually chose Naveem because we like the way it sound, right? That it was like
Right.
sticky, right? That,
I
oh,
know. And it
Naveem, it's
just
easy to,
happened to mean
yeah,
that.
it's Naveem, it sounds good, it's sticky, okay, let's go with that, right? And the reason I'm bringing it up is, again, I feel like the universe provides like this, if you're aware, if you could see the patterns of it, right?
Right.
Like it's there. It's like, oh, we picked Naveem, whether it was like subconscious or not, right? It ended
Mhm.
up being that the meaning of it was newly born.
Exactly.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, Gene, because that's actually important, right? It's like, look, we picked the name first, and then it just happened to be the right definition. And it's like, I like what you said, the universe
yeah,
put it there, which we'll talk a little bit about that. But yeah, anybody that knows me knows that I believe the universe delivers.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
So now we talked about how COVID influenced us, but one of the things that COVID also did, the whole lockdowns, right? It's we realize the need for the community, right? One of the biggest things, right? It's like the community, getting people, people that you can share values with, that you can be together. But as you were saying, when you were talking about the spirituality, from a purpose of spirituality without dogma, right? Like a
Mm-hmm.
place where a community can come together and explore that spirituality without the limitations. I'm going to call them limitations, right? Or the
Yeah.
constraints of dogma. So when we were looking at what Naveem was going to look like and how it was going to work, that was one of the biggest drivers, right? It's like, we need to build a community driven type of site, right? Somewhere that people can, diverse experts can come in, whether they're energy healers, coaches, astrologers, can come in and share their wisdom, educate people, inspire them, but also people that were, what we call seekers, right? Could come in and if they were in the, I'm going to call it the despair, using the word that we use, right? They were in the point of despair, somewhere that they could find, hey, where do I, is there a place that I can start looking at? Right? I have this feeling, I have these questions,
Mm-hmm.
right? Spirituality, where do I get it? So one of the key things is, and I want to say this because for listeners, it's like, look, we're not selling enlightenment. It's not that we're saying, you're going to come into Naveem and tomorrow you're going to be enlightened, right? That's not what we were driving towards. But we are driving, what we want is a place where people can come in and have the path and the tools to drive their journey,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the journey is.
Yeah.
Right? That's our goal. in a community driven environment.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely don't think, you know, you spirituality is a destination, right? Like
Right.
it's, I mean, I think it's a lifelong journey.
Hmm.
You're always growing. I think it's very much tied to, like, if you look at it as a person, right? You don't just stop
Right.
at any point. There's always change and there's always challenge, and then there's always, you know, renewal and learnings and things like that.
Right.
I very much think that spirituality is the same. Like it's the same because
Yeah.
spirituality is your own personal journey to something, right?
Yeah.
And I think what I hope Naveem becomes is the place where it can help you maybe answer some of the questions that you have, right? And those answers don't come directly from Naveem, but I think through the practices and the people that, you know, the practitioners that are on Naveem can guide you to your own answers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Same place. Now, another area that we also wanted to concentrate is kind of like, the where we have ethical partnerships with people that can offer products, right?
Yeah.
That can help in that journey.
Yeah.
Now, on that end, I remember, interesting enough, before we went through the process of the despair and acquisition and everything else, back in 2017, there was a big hurricane in my island in Puerto Rico that sort of destroyed the island completely.
Yeah.
And at that time, I remember that the thought process started going in my head of, I saw a lot of people struggling, a lot of artisan people, a lot of people that offer local products that just didn't have a market. They didn't have anything to offer. And they, so the idea for me at the time was like, I would love to help these people, but at the time I didn't know how to. So combining that idea with what we're doing in Naveem, right? That came out with the idea of like, look, we can bring people that do, that are mindful creators, right?
Mm-hmm.
People that can actually, like, for instance, right? We have one of our practitioners, one of our merchants provides crystal infused water bottles, right?
Yeah.
People that actually mind what they do and they can offer those services. So where we want to go to, again, kind of provide the vision is a place where all sorts of creators can share their products across the globe that can actually help people and
Products
during their
and
journey,
services.
products and services
Yeah.
in the journey. But the idea is that we're helping both sides, right? So you have these, providers that may need help for whatever the reason may be, and they may not have a market. We want to offer them that market. And at the same time, for the seekers that may not know that these things are available,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we're in the local place, we want to offer them that place that they can kind of see. But we don't see Naveem as a marketplace, like a commercial place, right? We do see it as more of think of it as a meeting place,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's interesting because I remember we were working through this. I thought about the square. Remember that we talked about like a square, like a square where people meet. So the vision is, imagine an online meeting place where we're connecting people, both are the seekers and the providers, to help each other, lift each other up. That's what we want them to.
Yeah, I definitely, I really see an advantage of doing it because it's the practitioners that, at least that we've met and that are on Naveem, they all have a core need to help people, right? Like
Mhm.
practitioners are there because they want to help people, right?
Right.
So we're
Right.
helping them help people, and then people that need help need the practitioners. So it is a very like full circle type of place, I guess, a full circle meeting place that I think in our eyes we're trying to help everyone and
That's
push the ability for everyone to either continue or start their own spiritual journey inside, like looking inside.
Yeah. So since we're talking about the spiritual journey and what we're trying to do, we do have a set of what's called values, right? Like core values, things that we go through, that we believe in, that
That are
kind of drive.
pillars.
there are pillars to what we build on Naveem, right? So I would say one of the key ones is what we call gratitude, right? Now that has multiple meanings for multiple people. Or for us, we have gratitude when we honor the journey that people go through, the lessons that they learn through that, and obviously the community.
Yeah.
Right. So, what's another one, Jean?
I think another one that's important for us is respect. I think we want to, listen first to traditions, right? We want to listen to people's stories and to each other, because I think without that, level of respect back and forth, you can't really start anything, right? That it's baseline is there.
True. And lining up with respect, one of the things that we live in is authenticity, right?
Yeah.
We believe that people come as they are, independently where they come from and where they are in their journey. But we celebrate the different paths that people can take for growth. And more importantly, we value their real experiences, right? So we don't, I would say, real experiences over perfect appearances, right? Because as we talked about spirituality and growth and get into that journey, it's important to be authentic to that process, whatever that may take you and however that looks for everybody.
Yeah. And I think another one is connection, right? We talk about a community a lot, but at the end of the day, it really is about connection, connecting with each other, right?
Right.
And, with both of us coming from, a tech background, obviously we believe that technology should bring people together and not isolate them, right? And so connection, community, this is where we're hoping that Naveem can, foster that on a online destination.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah.
And all that together, we're hoping that we empower people to that journey, right? So one of the things we want to do is we want to make spiritual growth available to everyone, everywhere, right? So if you think about it, if you take nothing else from this podcast, remember connection and empowerment. Those are the two key things that you can hear from Naveem, right? A place where people come to connect and have the power to go to the spiritual journey.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all the time we have today. So thank you for sharing this first chapter of Naveem Connect with us. If there's one thing we hope you take away today, it's this: your journey isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about uncovering the strength that's already there, even in the mess.
And speaking of uncovering strength, next week, we're going to sit down with Stephanie. She is an intuitive energy healer who turned her own battles with anxiety into a roadmap for transformation. She's going to share how tarot cards became her guidebook and why energy hygiene is the self-care you didn't know you needed, and how to hear your intuition, even when life's shouting over it.
Whether you're skeptical or spiritually curious, her story will make you rethink what's possible. So hit follow, share this with somebody who needs a reminder to trust their gut, and remember, you're not alone in the journey.
Until next time, this is Jean and Humphrey signing off. Stay connected, stay kind.